At my sister's grand wedding reception, I said my name, but the staff just blinked. Sorry, your name isn't on here. Stunned, I looked at my mother. She smirked. Did you truly think you were welcome? Outsiders aren't allowed. I stayed calm. Then all live as one. I walked on. But during the ceremony, my mother's phone suddenly began ringing over and over. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into creating something beautiful for your own sister's wedding, only to be branded a stranger and publicly denied entry at the door by your own mother. That moment wasn't just a betrayal. It was the final, devastating confirmation that I was a complete outsider in the very family I longed to belong to. The air in our suburban Boston house, though not opulent, always felt thick with unspoken rules and layered expectations. It smelled faintly of my dad's accounting ledgers and my mom's strong coffee, a scent that now brings a bittersweet pang. Robert, my dad, an accountant, always said a good school district was the best investment he could make for his daughters. My mom, Eleanor, a part-time real estate agent, truly considered herself the architect of our domestic world. Sophia, my sister, 3 years my senior, was Eleanor's undeniable favorite from the moment I could remember. When I was little, I just thought Sophia got more attention because she was older or perhaps needed more help. Sophia was beautiful, popular, and struggled academically, a triple threat for attracting my mother's boundless focus. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more academically inclined, finding my solace in books and sketching pads. My dad, Robert, often joined me at the dining room table, watching me draw, telling me I had a talent. Those moments with him were precious islands of validation, a stark contrast to the vast sea of invisibility I often felt navigating our home. Then, everything shattered when I was 15. Dad came home complaining of heartburn, lay down, and never woke up. A massive heart attack, sudden and devastating. I can still feel the cold marble floor under my knees at his funeral, watching my mother, Eleanor, wrap her arm tightly around Sophia's shoulders. I stood slightly apart, clutching Dad's favorite tie, the one Mom had allowed me to keep. After his death, the subtle favoritism didn't just intensify, it became a chasm. Eleanor poured every ounce of her emotional energy into Sophia's life, attending every event, endless shopping trips, meticulously planning Sophia's future. For me, you've always been so independent, Charlotte, Mom would say, her voice devoid of actual admiration, merely using it as justification for her emotional neglect. It was a wound that never truly healed, a constant ache beneath the surface. Despite the gaping hole where home support should have been, I thrived academically. My junior year, a portrait series I'd created won a prestigious art competition. My art teacher, bless her heart, had submitted it without my knowledge. The local newspaper even ran a feature. My mother, Eleanor, displayed the article on the fridge, yes, but her words. "It's nice you have your little drawings to keep you busy," she'd say, or Sophia could have been artistic too, but she's always been so popular. It felt like a backhanded compliment, an asterisk next to every achievement. Sophia's jealousy flared openly during my senior year when I received a full scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design. What should have been a moment of shared joy twisted into another source of tension. "Guess some people get all the luck," Sophia muttered at the dinner where I announced my acceptance. Mom quickly added, "Well, college isn't for everyone. Sophia has real-world skills." Moving away for college offered a much-needed emotional reprieve. I excelled in graphic design, freelancing successfully even in my sophomore year. After graduation, I landed a job at a boutique design agency in Boston, allowing me to finally afford my own small apartment. I was building a life, independent, separate, but I still tried to connect. Every Sunday, a call to Mom. Every holiday, thoughtful gifts, enduring the inevitable comparisons. Sophia's boyfriend drives a BMW, Sophia's thinking about buying a house in the suburbs. Always that implicit comparison, leaving me feeling perpetually inadequate. When I was 27, a significant promotion at work. I called Mom, bursting with the news. Her first response, "That's nice, honey, but Sophia just got engaged. Daniel proposed last night with the most beautiful ring." The conversation immediately pivoted to wedding plans, Mom already envisioning it as the social event of the season. Daniel came from a wealthy family. Mom saw Sophia's marriage as her golden ticket to the social status she'd always craved. Eleanor Wells, mother of the bride, finally accessing the upper-class circles she'd only ever sold houses to. I was happy for Sophia. Truly. Despite our fractured history, I wanted her happiness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that, yet again, my achievements were dwarfed. "What can I do to help?" I offered during a family dinner, hoping to bridge the gap. "You're a designer, right?" Sophia asked, almost as if rediscovering my profession. "Maybe you could help with the invitations? Save us some money." I agreed, a flicker of hope igniting. Maybe this, creating something beautiful for her day, would finally earn me the approval, the inclusion I desperately craved. One more time, I was willing to try to be the sister, the daughter they wanted. Sophia and Daniel's engagement stretched for 14 months, a period where wedding planning became Mom and Sophia's entire universe. The venue, an exclusive country club where Daniel's parents were members. The guest list swelled to over 200, many strangers, but crucial business associates or social connections Mom yearned to impress. True to my word, I offered my professional skills. I could design custom invitations, I suggested, imagining the exquisite pieces. It would be my gift. Sophia exchanged a look with Mom. That would be helpful, she said, but we need them to be really elegant, like professional quality. I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat. I am a professional, Sophia. I design materials for luxury brands. Oh, right, she mumbled. Well, if you think you can handle it, that'd be great. The dismissiveness stung, but I pressed on. For weeks, I poured countless hours into creating bespoke invitation designs, collaborating with a high-end printer from my industry network. Mood boards, font selections, color schemes, everything meticulously crafted to complement Sophia's vision. I even hand-illustrated delicate floral borders that became the wedding's signature motif. The invitations were just the beginning. Soon, I was designing programs, place cards, menus, thank you cards, even custom monogrammed cocktail napkins. What started as one gift ballooned into thousands of dollars worth of free professional design services. Could you make the font a little more, I don't know, fancy? Sophia would ask. Or, Mom thinks the border should be gold, not silver. Each revision, each request, I met without complaint, seeing them as stepping stones to earning their elusive approval. 3 months before the wedding, browsing the website I had created for them, I noticed something odd. Under family, Sophia was listed with my mother and Daniel's family, but my name was conspicuously absent. An oversight, I told myself. The next day, I casually mentioned it to Sophia. Hey, my name isn't on the family section. Oh, weird, she said, sounding distracted. I'll fix that. Probably just an oversight. Weeks passed. Despite sending updated information for various sections of the site, my name remained invisible. And I still hadn't received an actual invitation. I assumed, of course, that I wouldn't need one. I was knee-deep in creating them. But as RSVPs trickled in, a knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach. Mom, I asked during a call, as she excitedly described Sophia's final dress fitting, I never actually got my invitation. I know it sounds silly, since I designed them, but I'd love one as a keepsake. A pause. Oh, Sophia's handling the guest list. I'm sure she just assumed you knew you were invited since you're helping so much. The explanation was plausible, so I let it go. When I brought it up to Sophia, her response was equally vague. You don't need an invitation, Charlotte. Your family. Technically. That technically landed like a cold slap. I pushed the feeling down. I was determined to be supportive, no drama before the wedding. Maybe it was just wedding stress making them both act strangely. 6 weeks before the wedding, I spent an entire weekend designing and printing the seating charts and place cards, all based on Sophia's information. As I finished, reviewing everything, my breath hitched. My name wasn't on any of the tables. I double-checked the family tables, certain there was a mistake. Nothing. I wasn't listed anywhere. I called Sophia immediately. I don't see my name on any of the seating arrangements. Oh, she said, an uncomfortable note in her voice. Well, you'll be busy helping coordinate things, right? I figured you wouldn't have time to sit and eat. My jaw clenched. Sophia, I'm not the wedding coordinator. You have Brenda for that. I've just been helping with the design elements. Right. Well, I'll figure something out. Maybe you can sit with some of my college friends or something. Despite these glaring warning signs, I continued to pour myself into the wedding. I spent money I could ill afford on a stunning emerald green dress, chosen to complement the wedding colors without matching the bridesmaids. I found the perfect gift, a vintage silver frame, custom engraved with their names and wedding date, intended to hold a cherished wedding photo. The night before the wedding, sleep eluded me. Excitement mingled with an escalating anxiety about my place in this event, in my family. I tried on the dress one last time, practiced my hair and makeup, packed everything meticulously. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted, desperately, to finally be enough. Wedding morning. I woke early, strong coffee in hand. I texted Sophia, good morning, big day. Love you. No response. I tried not to overthink it. She was the bride, overwhelmed, I reasoned. Driving to the country club, I allowed myself a fragile hope. Maybe today was a new beginning. Maybe seeing all my hard work, all my efforts come to fruition, would finally make Mom and Sophia appreciate me. Maybe being part of this important day would make me feel like I belonged. I had no idea that day would instead mark an ending, a definitive confirmation that in my family's eyes, I would always be an outsider. I arrived 3 hours early. The parking lot buzzed with activity, florists, caterers, photographers. I grabbed my bag, a meticulously assembled emergency kit with extra programs, place cards, even super glue for last-minute fixes. Inside, the grand entrance hall was breathtaking, marble floors, a sweeping staircase. I approached a woman with a clipboard, Brenda, the coordinator, her name tag read. Hi, I'm Charlotte Wells, the bride's sister. I designed everything and wanted to check if anything needed attention. Brenda looked at me with slight confusion. Oh, you're the designer. I thought you were handling things remotely. Sophia didn't mention you'd be here for setup. I'm her sister, I repeated, a cold prickle of unease beginning to spread. Right, Brenda said, checking her clipboard. Well, everything's under control. The mother of the bride is upstairs with the bridal party if you need to speak with them. Mother of the bride. Not my mother, but the mother of the bride, as if her identity was solely defined by Sophia, as if I had no connection to her at all. I made my way upstairs. Laughter and music spilled from Sophia's suite. I knocked. A college friend of Sophia's, whom I'd met a few times, opened the door. Oh, she said, clearly surprised. Charlotte, right? Yes, I forced a smile. Just wanted to see if Sophia needs anything. Before she could reply, my mother, Eleanor, appeared, her expression tightening. Charlotte, what are you doing here so early? I came to help, I said, make sure all the materials are set up correctly. Mom glanced over her shoulder, then stepped into the hallway, partially closing the door. Everything's under control. Sophia is very busy with her bridesmaids. Can I just say hello? I won't stay long. Mom sighed, a sound of weary impatience. She's very stressed, Charlotte. Today needs to be perfect. Maybe you can make yourself useful downstairs. Check on the table arrangements or something. I nodded, swallowing the hurt, the sense of being pushed away again. Sure, I'll do that. As I turned to leave, I heard Sophia's voice from inside the room. Is she gone? I don't need any drama today. I pretended not to hear, walking away, clinging to the desperate hope that pre-wedding nerves were just making everyone act strangely. I headed to the reception hall. The ballroom was stunning, round tables elegantly set with fine china and crystal. My designs were everywhere, programs on ceremony chairs, menus at each place setting, monogrammed cocktail napkins at the bar, the grand seating chart display. A small surge of pride, bittersweet, seeing my work come to life so beautifully. As I admired the centerpieces, I overheard two staff members nearby. The mother of the bride was very specific about the guest list, one whispered. They've had to be careful about keeping certain people away from the important guests. Rich people drama, the other replied with a laugh. I moved away, my stomach tightening, telling myself they couldn't possibly be referring to me. The hours blurred. Guests arrived for the ceremony. I slipped into the back row in the garden. No one acknowledged me. No one asked why I wasn't with the family. The ceremony was beautiful, Sophia radiant in her designer gown, walking down the aisle on my mother's arm. I watched Eleanor cry happy tears, something I'd never seen her do for any of my own achievements. Afterward, guests moved to the terrace for cocktail hour. The wedding party took photos. I stood alone, watching from a distance as Sophia, Daniel, my mother, and Daniel's family posed, picture after picture. No one called me over. Then, the reception. Guests lined up at the ballroom entrance, staff checking names against the guest list. I joined the line, mentally rehearsing how I'd laugh off the obvious oversight when I explained I was the bride's sister. My turn. Charlotte Wells. The young man with the tablet scrolled, then scrolled again, his discomfort growing. I'm sorry, I don't see that name. There must be a mistake, I said, my smile feeling fixed. I'm Sophia Wells' sister. Well, she's Sophia Reynolds now, I suppose. He checked again. I'm really sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't on the list. I need to check with the coordinator. He waved over Brenda, who looked annoyed. They whispered, occasionally glancing at me. Brenda approached, a tight, professional smile on her face. There seems to be some confusion. Your name isn't on the approved guest list. That's impossible. I felt the heat rising to my face. I'm the bride's sister. I designed all the materials for the wedding. Yes, we're grateful for your design work, Brenda said carefully, but I can only admit guests who are on the list approved by the bride and mother of the bride. I saw my mother, Eleanor, approaching from inside the ballroom, drawn by the commotion. What's going on here? She asked, her voice controlled, but with an unmistakable edge of irritation. Mom, they're saying I'm not on the guest list. I explained, certain she would clear things up immediately. Instead, she gave me a look I'll never forget. Cold. Unyielding. Did you really think you were invited? Strangers aren't allowed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Strangers. Mom, I'm your daughter. Sophia's sister. You haven't been part of this family in any meaningful way for years, Charlotte, she said quietly, so nearby guests couldn't hear. You've always chosen to keep yourself separate. Sophia wanted her special day to be perfect, with no awkwardness or tension. Surely you can understand that. I stood there, utterly stunned. All those months of work, the thoughtful gift, the expensive dress I was wearing, all based on the assumption that I was actually invited to celebrate my own sister's wedding. In that moment, something inside me broke. But something also clarified. Years of subtle exclusion suddenly made perfect, agonizing sense. I wasn't just less favored, I was unwanted. I looked my mother directly in the eyes, and with remarkable calm, a calm born of absolute devastation, I said, "Then I'll live like a stranger." I turned and walked away, head held high, even as my world collapsed around me. Behind me, I heard Brenda ask Mom if everything was all right. Just a misunderstanding with a vendor. Everything's fine. A vendor. That's all I was to them. Someone to provide a service and then disappear. As I walked through the grand entrance hall toward the exit, I caught a glimpse of myself in a large, ornate mirror. Still Charlotte Wells. Still standing. Still breathing. But shattered into 1,000 pieces. I straightened my shoulders, each step taking me further from the family that had never truly been mine. The country club's massive oak doors closed behind me with a heavy thud, punctuating the finality. I stood on the wide stone steps, suddenly acutely aware of the ridiculous green heels I'd spent too much money on. They were already pinching. And I had nowhere to go. My car was in the farthest corner of the parking lot. I started walking, each step sending shooting pain through my feet. It felt appropriate somehow. Physical pain to mirror the emotional trauma. Halfway to my car, I stopped. The full reality of what had just happened crashed over me, and my legs simply wouldn't carry me further. I spotted a small stone bench near a decorative fountain. I made my way to it, sinking down as my composure finally cracked. I sat there, watching the water cascade, its soothing sound a strange backdrop to my unraveling. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, memories flooded back, one after another. Each recontextualized by this final, brutal rejection. My 16th birthday, forgotten while Mom and Sophia went shopping. My high school graduation party, Mom telling her friends how Sophia had really struggled. After Dad died, no mention of my own grief. College move-in day, Mom dropping me off with a quick hug, rushing back for Sophia's sorority event. Every holiday, my gifts met with polite acknowledgement, while Sophia's elicited genuine excitement. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a consistent, normalized pattern, one I'd made excuses for, blamed myself for. But sitting on that bench, in that expensive dress and painful shoes, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. I had never been wanted. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would come without question. "Gabriella, it's Charlotte. I need you." Gabriella Miller had been my college roommate and remained my closest friend. She lived about 30 minutes from the country club. I knew she'd been surprised when I told her I couldn't bring a +1 to the wedding. "What's wrong?" "You sound strange," she said immediately. "They didn't invite me," I choked out, my voice finally breaking. "I'm sitting outside. They wouldn't let me in." "What?" "That's impossible. You're the bride's sister." "Apparently, that doesn't matter. Can you come get me?" "I don't think I should drive right now. I'm already putting on my shoes." "Stay put." While waiting for Gabriella, I sat perfectly still, afraid any movement might make me completely fall apart. A few late guests gave me curious glances. What did they see? A woman in formal attire, sitting alone by a fountain, staring into space. Did I look as hollowed out as I felt? When Gabriella's blue Honda pulled up 28 minutes later, I rose mechanically and walked toward it. She jumped out, meeting me halfway, pulling me into a fierce hug. "Those absolute monsters," she whispered into my hair. "I never liked your mother, but this is a new low, even for her." In the safety of Gabriella's car, the tears finally came. They weren't delicate, dignified tears, but ugly, violent sobs that seemed to tear themselves from my chest. Gabriella handed me tissues and drove in silence, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I designed everything," I choked out between sobs. "The invitations, the programs, the place cards, everything they're using in there has my work on it. But I wasn't good enough to attend." "This isn't about you not being good enough," Gabriella said firmly. "This is about them being terrible people. You hear me? Terrible people." At Gabriella's apartment, I changed out of my emerald dress, carefully hanging it, knowing I'd never wear it again. She gave me sweatpants and a t-shirt, then made tea while I washed the makeup from my tear-stained face. "Check your phone," she called from the kitchen. "I bet people are wondering where you are." I hadn't looked at my phone since calling Gabriella. Now, a flood of notifications. New posts on Sophia's wedding hashtag, photos of the ceremony, the first dance, the cake cutting. My designs were visible in many shots, but I was nowhere to be seen. Text messages, not from my mother or Sophia, but from distant relatives. "Great seeing everyone except you today. Missed you at the wedding. Where were you hiding during the reception? Everything okay?" And then, a message from my mother. "Your behavior was completely unacceptable. You've embarrassed the entire family. We'll discuss this after the honeymoon." My behavior. As if I had done something wrong by simply existing, by expecting to be treated like family. What does it say? Gabriella asked, returning with 2 mugs of tea. I showed her my mother's message. Her face hardened. Block her, she said. Block both of them, at least for now. I can't just, you can. You should. They don't get to hurt you like this, and then dictate the terms of your response. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over the block button. My entire life had been spent trying to earn love and acceptance from my family. Could I really cut them off so easily? They already cut you off, Charlotte. Gabriella said gently, reading my thoughts. You're just acknowledging what they've already done. I blocked them both. Then I turned off my phone entirely. The silence that followed was both terrifying and liberating. That night, curled up in Gabriella's guest bed, I experienced waves of grief, rage, humiliation, and, occasionally, brief moments of numb relief. It was as if a weight I'd carried for years had been violently torn away, leaving me both lighter and profoundly unbalanced. Who am I whispered into the darkness, if I'm not the person desperately trying to be good enough for Eleanor and Sophia Wells? I didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time, I was ready to find out. The week after the wedding was the lowest point of my adult life. I called in sick to work, unable to face explaining. One day bled into 5 as I remained in Gabriella's guest room, alternating between sleeping 12 hours straight and lying awake at 3 a.m., replaying every family interaction, searching for signs I should have recognized earlier. Gabriella brought me food I barely touched, sat with me in silence when I couldn't speak. She handled practical matters, driving to my apartment for clothes and my laptop, calling my boss to explain a family emergency, a phrase that now felt bitterly ironic, and screening calls from concerned friends. On Wednesday, I turned my phone back on. A flood of notifications. More messages from relatives, a few concerned texts from coworkers, multiple missed calls from my mother. Nothing from Sophia. I listened to one voicemail from Mom. Charlotte, this childish behavior needs to stop. You're making a scene over nothing. Call me back immediately. Over nothing. Being publicly rejected and humiliated by my only family was nothing to her. I deleted the message and all the others without listening. Then I opened social media, immediately regretting it when my feed was dominated by wedding photos. In one image, my mother stood between Sophia and Daniel, beaming with pride. The caption read, "Our perfect little family." Our perfect little family. A family that very explicitly did not include me. I closed the apps, putting my phone away, sinking further into depression. The question kept circling, what had I done to deserve this? What fatal flaw did I possess that made me so unlovable to the people who should have loved me most? By Friday, Gabriella had had enough. She marched into the guest room, flung open the blinds, and sat on the edge of the bed. Get up, she said, not unkindly. Shower, get dressed. We're going out. I can't, I mumbled, pulling the blanket over my head. She yanked it back down. You can and you will. You're going to see a therapist today. I called Dr. Anya Sharma. She had a cancellation and can see you at 2. A therapist? Gabriella, I don't need, yes, you do, she interrupted. This isn't normal sadness, Charlotte. This is trauma. You need professional help, not just me bringing you soup and letting you hide from the world. I wanted to argue, but I didn't have the energy. Deep down, I knew she was right. This pain went beyond ordinary family disagreements. This was about a lifetime of conditional love and systematic exclusion that had culminated in the most public rejection possible. Dr. Anya Sharma's office was warm and surprisingly non-clinical, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Dr. Sharma herself was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that somehow put me at ease. Tell me why you're here, Charlotte, she said. After initial introductions, I took a deep breath and told her everything. Not just about the wedding, but about the years of subtle favoritism, the constant seeking of approval, the way I had built my entire identity around trying to be good enough for people who would never see me that way. What you're describing sounds like a family dynamic with narcissistic patterns, Dr. Sharma said when I finished. Your mother appears to have cast Sophia in the role of the golden child and you as the scapegoat. These aren't conscious choices on her part, but deep-seated patterns that likely stem from her own upbringing and psychological needs. So, it's not that I did something wrong? I asked, embarrassed by how small my voice sounded. No, Charlotte. Children don't earn or deserve mistreatment. You were placed in this role for reasons that have everything to do with your mother's limitations and nothing to do with your worth. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Then why does it hurt so much? If I know intellectually that it's not my fault, why do I still feel like there must be something fundamentally wrong with me? Because you've internalized these messages since childhood. Your brain formed during these experiences, learning that love was conditional and that you were somehow less deserving than your sister. Unlearning those beliefs is possible, but it takes time and work. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued seeing Dr. Sharma twice weekly. I returned to my own apartment, but spent most evenings with Gabriella or on video calls with other friends. I went back to work, throwing myself into projects that had nothing to do with weddings or family celebrations. During a particularly difficult session, Dr. Sharma suggested I look through old family photos, not to reminisce, but to observe the patterns with new awareness. That night, I pulled out the albums I'd taken when I moved out of my mother's house. There weren't many pictures of me alone. I was almost always in group shots, often standing slightly apart or being held by my father rather than my mother. In one Christmas photo, taken when I was about 7, I was opening a present while Sophia watched. Even then, I could see it in my expression, the hopeful anxiety, the desperate desire for approval. I had been performing my whole life for an audience that had already decided not to applaud. Near the bottom of the box, I found something I'd forgotten. A letter my father had written to me when I won a school art contest in 5th grade. He'd been away on a business trip and couldn't attend the ceremony, but he'd left this note for me to open afterward. "My dearest Charlotte," it read, "I'm so sorry I couldn't be there today to see you receive your award. I know how hard you worked on your painting, and I couldn't be prouder of you. You have a special way of seeing the world that is entirely your own. Never lose that perspective, even when others don't understand it. Being different isn't a flaw. It's your greatest strength. All my love, Dad." I traced his handwriting, feeling a connection to him that transcended the years since his death. He had seen me, truly seen me, and loved what he saw. That was a truth I could hold on to, a foundation I could build upon. In my next session, I brought up my father's letter. He was the only one who ever really accepted me for who I was, I said. After he died, there was no one left in my family who did. But there are people in your life now who do, she pointed out. Gabriella, your other friends, me. And most importantly, you're learning to accept yourself. How do I do that? I asked. How do I stop measuring my worth by whether my mother and sister want me around? By recognizing that their assessment isn't accurate or fair. By understanding that their rejection says more about their limitations than about your value. And by building a life that isn't centered around winning approval you may never receive. I nodded slowly. I think I've been waiting my whole life for them to change, to suddenly see me and love me the way I need it. But that's never going to happen, is it? I can't predict the future, Dr. Sharma said carefully. People sometimes do grow and change, but you can't build your life around waiting for that possibility. You need to live for yourself now. That night, I researched family estrangement and toxic relationships. I joined online forums where others shared similar experiences. I wasn't alone in this pain. Many people, I realized, had faced the devastating recognition that their families of origin couldn't or wouldn't provide the love and acceptance they deserved. Reading their stories of grief, healing, and eventually building fulfilling lives gave me hope. Many had created families of choice that provided the support and love their biological families hadn't. Others had established limited, carefully boundary-driven relationships with toxic relatives. Some had cut ties completely. There wasn't a single right answer, I realized. But what all these stories had in common was a moment of clarity. A point where the person stopped blaming themselves and recognized the dynamic for what it was. My wedding rejection had been my moment of clarity. As painful as it was, it had torn away the veil of denial I'd been hiding behind. I couldn't unsee the truth now. And while that brought grief, it also brought possibility. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. And that meant I didn't need to fix myself to be worthy of love. I already was. 3 weeks after the wedding, I was ready to take more active steps toward healing. Dr. Sharma had helped me develop a self-care routine, morning journaling, regular exercise, meditation. These weren't magical solutions, but they provided structure and small moments of peace during a time when everything felt chaotic. I returned to work full-time, throwing myself into new projects. My creative director noticed the change in my work, a new boldness and emotional depth that hadn't been there before. "There's something different about your designs lately," she commented during a review meeting. "They're more authentic, more impactful. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." What I was doing was channeling my pain into my art, finding visual expressions for feelings I couldn't always put into words. Ironically, being rejected by my family was making me a better designer. At Dr. Sharma's suggestion, I drafted an email to my mother and Sophia, setting clear boundaries. I didn't send it immediately, letting it sit in my drafts folder while I considered exactly what I wanted to say. Meanwhile, the messages from my mother continued, growing increasingly manipulative. "Your sister is devastated that you're creating this drama during her honeymoon," one text read. Another said, "I raised you better than this, Charlotte. This silent treatment is childish and cruel." I showed these messages to Dr. Sharma. "Notice how she's flipping the narrative," the therapist pointed out. "In her version, you're the one causing harm by reacting to their actions, not them harming you with the initial rejection." Classic Darvo. "Darvo," I said, using the acronym she'd taught me: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. "Exactly. And how does reading these messages make you feel?" I considered the question. A month ago, they would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. Now, I just felt sad. Sad that she couldn't take responsibility. Sad that this was the mother I got. That's progress, Dr. Sharma said with an approving nod. Tremendous progress. After another week of reflection, I finalized my email. Mom and Sophia, I'm writing to address what happened at the wedding and to establish clear boundaries going forward. Being deliberately excluded from Sophia's wedding after contributing significant time, skill, and emotional energy to the preparations made it painfully clear how you both view me and my place in this family. I need time and space to process this hurt. During this period, I ask that you respect my need for distance. Please do not contact me for at least 3 months. After that time, if I choose to reestablish communication, it will be on different terms than before. I will no longer accept being treated as an afterthought or an inconvenience. I will no longer work to earn love that should be freely given. I deserve better, and I'm finally ready to insist on it. This isn't about punishment or drama. It's about self-preservation and setting healthy boundaries. I hope someday you can understand that. Charlotte, I sent the email on a Sunday morning, then turned off my phone and went for a long walk in the Boston Public Garden. When I returned and checked my messages, there were multiple missed calls and texts from both my mother and Sophia. Exactly what I'd expected. Sophia's text was brief, but cutting, way to make everything about you as usual. My mother's was longer, hitting all the familiar notes: guilt, obligation, denial, and manipulation. I don't know what fantasy you've concocted in your head, but this is completely uncalled for. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By abandoning your family? Your sister is heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. If your father could see this behavior. I didn't respond to either message. Instead, I blocked their numbers, at least temporarily. It was a boundary I needed to maintain for my own well-being. The following weeks brought unexpected changes. Without the emotional drain of trying to please my family, I had more energy for other relationships and pursuits. I joined a local art collective, volunteered at a community center teaching design skills to teenagers, and reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with. One rainy Tuesday, I stopped at a coffee shop near my apartment to work on some freelance projects. While waiting in line, I dropped my sketchbook. A man behind me picked it up. As he handed it back, he glanced at the page it had fallen open to, a series of logo concepts I was developing. "These are really good," he said. "Are you a designer?" His name was Leo Hayes, and he was a photographer specializing in architectural and interior design. We ended up sharing a table, talking for over an hour about creative processes, client challenges, and our favorite designers. "Would you want to get coffee again sometime?" he asked as we were leaving. "Or dinner? I'd love to see more of your work." It wasn't until I was walking home that I realized he might have been asking me out, not just expressing professional interest. The thought made me pause. Was I ready for that? After a moment's reflection, I decided it didn't matter if I was ready. I was willing to find out. Leo and I began seeing each other, sometimes for professional collaboration, sometimes for dates, often for both. He was thoughtful and direct in a way that was refreshing after years of navigating my family's indirect communications and hidden agendas. When he said he'd call, he called. When he had a concern, he expressed it. When he enjoyed something about me, he said so plainly. "I like how your mind works," he told me one evening as we walked along the Charles River. "You see connections that other people miss." These simple affirmations meant more to me than any compliment I'd ever received. There was no performance required, no hoops to jump through. Leo liked me as I was, not as I pretended to be. As my personal life blossomed, I also made a significant professional decision. I began looking for a new apartment in a different neighborhood, wanting a fresh start in a place that didn't hold memories of rushing to family dinners where I'd feel excluded, or returning home dejected after another disappointing interaction. I found a sunny one-bedroom in Jamaica Plain, further from my office, but in a vibrant community with more artists and creative professionals. The move was both physically exhausting and emotionally liberating. Each item I packed represented a choice about what to bring into my new life and what to leave behind. In my new space, I created a home office that doubled as a studio for personal creative projects. I painted the walls a soft sage green that made me feel calm and grounded. I hung art by local artists I admired and friends whose work inspired me. I made every decision based solely on what I wanted, not what anyone else would think. 3 months passed, then 4. The holiday season approached, traditionally a time when family obligations would have dominated my thoughts and schedule. My mother emailed, ignoring the boundaries I'd set in my previous message. "Thanksgiving dinner will be at 3 p.m. Sophia and Daniel will be there. I expect you to put this nonsense behind you and behave like an adult. Family is family." I drafted and redrafted my response several times before settling on, "Thank you for the invitation, but I won't be attending Thanksgiving this year. I wish you a pleasant holiday." It was polite but firm. No explanations, no apologies, no opening for negotiation. Instead of the traditional family Thanksgiving, I accepted Gabriella's invitation to a friend-giving gathering. Leo came too, meeting my closest friends for the first time. We ate too much, played board games, and laughed until my sides hurt. Not once did I feel I was performing or seeking approval. Not once did I feel less than or unwelcome. As the evening wound down, Gabriella pulled me aside. "How are you really doing with everything?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm doing authentically," I finally said. "Sometimes that means I'm sad or angry. Sometimes it means I'm happier than I ever remember being. But it's all real now. I'm not pretending anymore." She hugged me tightly. That's all any of us can ask for. The wedding rejection that had once felt like the end of my world had become the beginning of a new one. A world built on genuine connections, clear boundaries, and the radical notion that I was enough exactly as I was. 1 year after Sophia's wedding, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days following the rejection. My design business was thriving. I had left the agency to start my own boutique studio specializing in branding for small creative businesses. My relationship with Leo had deepened into something solid and nurturing. My apartment had become a true home, filled with art, plants, and frequent gatherings of friends. I still saw Dr. Sharma monthly, now focusing less on crisis management and more on continued growth and occasional navigation of family situations. The work we'd done together had helped me develop what she called an internal validation system, the ability to assess my own worth without relying on external approval, particularly from my family. This new foundation was tested 13 months after the wedding, when Sophia called me out of the blue. I had maintained minimal contact with my family, exchanging brief, civil emails around holidays and birthdays, but nothing more. Seeing Sophia's name on my phone screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but it was milder than it would have been before. I answered with a simple, "Hello, Sophia." "Charlotte." Her voice sounded strained. I need to talk to you." "I'm listening," I said, keeping my tone neutral. What followed was unexpected. Sophia's perfect marriage was in trouble. Daniel had been working constantly, leaving her alone in their expensive suburban house. My mother had been pressuring them about starting a family, adding tension to an already strained relationship. Sophia was miserable and didn't know who to turn to. "Mom just keeps saying I need to be more understanding about Daniel's work hours, that all successful men are busy," she said, her voice breaking. "She says I should be grateful for the lifestyle he provides and stop complaining." I recognized the pattern immediately, our mother prioritizing status and appearances over genuine emotional needs. For the first time, Sophia was experiencing what it felt like to have her feelings dismissed. "That sounds really difficult," I said carefully. "I'm sorry you're going through this." "I thought about what you said in that email last year," Sophia continued, "about not accepting being treated as an afterthought, about deserving better." She paused. "I didn't get it then. Maybe I'm starting to now." It would have been easy to respond with bitterness or righteous satisfaction. Part of me wanted to say, "How does it feel to be on the receiving end for once?" But that wouldn't help either of us move forward. Instead, I said, "It's never too late to start recognizing your own worth, Sophia." We talked for nearly an hour, not as close sisters picking up where we left off, but as two adults, cautiously building something new. I listened more than I spoke, offering support without overcommitting. When she asked if we could get coffee sometime, I agreed, but suggested a public cafe rather than either of our homes. After the call, I sat in my window seat, watching the autumn leaves swirl in the courtyard below. I felt strangely peaceful. Sophia's reaching out didn't erase the past harm, but it suggested the possibility of a different future. Not the idealized family reconciliation I once would have desperately wanted, but perhaps something more honest and ultimately healthier. The coffee meeting with Sophia was awkward, but civil. We stuck to safe topics, mostly her work as an event coordinator, my new business, neutral childhood memories involving our father. As we were leaving, she hesitantly mentioned Thanksgiving. "Mom's expecting everyone at her house as usual," she said. "Would you consider coming? Daniel and I would be there, and his parents." I had prepared for this question. "I appreciate the invitation, Sophia, but I'll be hosting my own Thanksgiving this year with friends. You and Daniel would be welcome to join us if you'd like to try something different." Her surprise was evident. "You're hosting Thanksgiving?" "Yes. It won't be as formal as Mom's, but the food will be good and the company will be warm." Sophia didn't accept my invitation, which didn't surprise me. But the fact that I had extended it on my own terms, from a place of strength rather than need, felt significant. My mother's reaction to hearing about our coffee meeting came in the form of a lengthy email, alternating between statements like, "I'm glad you girls are finally putting this nonsense behind you," and subtle digs like, "I always knew you'd come around eventually when you were ready to be mature about things." In the past, I would have analyzed every word, looking for genuine approval while internalizing the criticism. Now, I simply noted the familiar patterns and responded with a brief, "I'm glad Sophia and I had a chance to talk as well. I hope you're doing well." The shift in my response to my mother wasn't lost on Leo, who had witnessed some of my earlier reactions to family communications. "You used to get so anxious whenever your mom contacted you," he observed one evening as we cooked dinner together. "Now you just seem, I don't know, unaffected." I considered this as I chopped vegetables. Not unaffected, exactly, more like. I see her clearly now. I understand her limitations. I know her approval isn't necessary for my happiness, and her disapproval doesn't determine my worth. Leo smiled. That's a big change from the woman I met a year ago who apologized for having opinions about where we should have dinner. He was right. The woman I'd been before the wedding rejection had been so afraid of disapproval that she'd made herself small, avoiding conflict at all costs. The woman I was now understood that healthy disagreement was part of an authentic relationship, and that true connection required showing up as my full, imperfect self. As another holiday season approached, I made good on my plan to host Thanksgiving. Our guest list included Gabriella and her boyfriend, Leo, several friends from the art collective, 2 former colleagues, and a few neighbors from my building. Sophia and Daniel declined as expected, but to my surprise, they sent a lovely bottle of wine and a handwritten note wishing us a happy holiday. The day was chaotic and wonderful. Too many cooks in my small kitchen, a turkey that took longer than expected, spirited debates about movies and books, board games that got increasingly competitive as the evening progressed. Looking around at the mismatched chairs and borrowed plates, the diverse group of people who had chosen to spend their holiday together, I felt a sense of completion. This was family, not defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual care and choice. These people saw me, valued me, and wanted me present, not for what I could do for them, but simply for who I was. The wedding rejection that had once seemed like the ultimate confirmation of my unworthiness had actually been the beginning of my liberation. By walking away from people who couldn't love me properly, I had created space for those who could. By releasing the exhausting pursuit of conditional approval, I had found the energy to build a life that truly reflected my values and desires. One evening in December, I received a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since the wedding. She was in town for a conference and wondered if we could meet for coffee. We arranged to meet at my favorite cafe. "I heard about what happened at Sophia's wedding," she said after we'd exchanged initial pleasantries. "Aunt Eleanor told everyone you had a scheduling conflict, but I figured that wasn't the whole story." I smiled slightly. "No, it wasn't." "You seem good though," she observed. "Better than I remember seeing you at family gatherings, actually." "I am good," I confirmed. It turns out that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself. As I walked home from the cafe, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments of grief for the family relationships I had wanted but never had. But those moments no longer defined me or determined my choices. I had learned that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who you choose, and who chooses you in return. I had learned that love shouldn't require constant performance or proving yourself worthy. Most importantly, I had learned that walking away from people who can't see your value isn't giving up. It's an act of profound self-respect. The stranger I had promised to become that day at the wedding reception wasn't really a stranger at all. She was the authentic self I had always been, beneath the layers of people-pleasing and approval-seeking. By walking away from conditional love, I had finally found my way home to myself. I walked home from the cafe that day, the crisp Boston air a refreshing contrast to the turbulent emotional currents that had once defined my life. My cousin's words echoed in my mind. "You seem good, better than I remember seeing you at family gatherings." I was good. I was, for the first time, authentically me. The pain hadn't vanished entirely. Grief for the family I'd wanted, the mother and sister I'd craved, still pricked at the edges of my heart sometimes. But it no longer consumed me, no longer dictated my choices or my worth. That evening, Leo and I were planning a small celebration for my studio's first big client win. It felt good, the kind of uncomplicated joy that had been so foreign to me for so long. We cooked together, our movements in my new kitchen a comfortable, easy rhythm. Leo, sensing my reflective mood, asked, "Penny for your thoughts?" I smiled, stirring the pasta sauce. Just thinking about how much has changed. How the worst thing, that wedding day, truly was the catalyst for the best things. He nodded, his eyes warm. It always takes immense courage to walk away from what's familiar, even if it's hurting you. Our relationship had blossomed beautifully in the months since. Leo was a steady anchor in my life, a man who saw me, truly saw me, without filters or expectations. We'd moved past casual dating, past the tentative "are we or aren't we," into a deeper, more committed partnership. He was the kind of person who remembered the small details, who listened intently, and whose presence made me feel both seen and safe. He'd met Gabriella and my other friends, easily integrating into my chosen family, a testament to his kind and genuine nature. He offered advice when asked, and quiet support when I just needed to vent about a client or a particularly thorny emotion. His lack of judgment about my family situation was a balm, a stark contrast to the subtle shaming I'd received my entire life. He simply accepted my truth, and that was revolutionary for me. My design studio, Charlotte Wells Creative, was growing too. The word-of-mouth referrals from my initial clients, coupled with my reinvigorated passion, brought in a steady stream of fascinating projects. I found myself taking on more socially conscious brands, companies dedicated to sustainability or community building. My work became a vessel for my evolving values, a testament to finding beauty and strength in authenticity. My creative director at my old agency had been right. The pain, channeled correctly, had given my work a depth and emotional resonance it hadn't possessed before. It was no longer just about aesthetics. It was about meaning, connection, and honest storytelling. One afternoon, about 6 months after Sophia's call, my phone rang. It was her again. This time, her voice wasn't just strained. It was laced with genuine despair. "Charlotte," she choked out, "he's left me." Daniel, her perfect husband, had packed his bags and moved out. The facade of their perfect life, the one my mother had so desperately curated, had crumbled. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," I said, a wave of complex emotions washing over me. Empathy, yes, for her pain, but also a distant, almost detached recognition of the inevitable. Mom is impossible," she sobbed. "She keeps saying it's my fault, that I wasn't supportive enough, that I drove him away. She's worried about appearances, about what Daniel's parents will think, about how this reflects on her." It was a familiar story, one I had lived through countless times. Now, Sophia was living it. "It's not your fault, Sophia," I said, the words feeling weighty and true as I offered them to her, a stark contrast to how rarely they'd been offered to me. "Sometimes people just aren't right for each other. And your worth isn't tied to your marriage or what anyone thinks of it." She was quiet for a moment. "That's what you said in your email, isn't it? About worth." "Yes," I confirmed, surprised she remembered. I didn't get it then. I really didn't. I just thought you were being dramatic, making everything about yourself." The admission, though hesitant, felt monumental. It wasn't a full apology, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement, a crack in the wall she'd built around herself for so long. We talked for hours that day, Sophia pouring out months of unhappiness, of feeling isolated and pressured in her marriage, of Daniel's increasingly cold and distant behavior. My mother, it turned out, had only exacerbated the problems, pushing Sophia to try harder, to fix things, to maintain the illusion of perfection at all costs. Sophia, the golden child, was finally experiencing the sharp edges of Eleanor's conditional love. It was heartbreaking, and yet, in a strange way, it felt like a beginning. I offered practical advice where I could, finding a good divorce lawyer, securing her financial independence, and, more importantly, emotional support. I didn't rush to save her, didn't offer to move in or drop everything. Dr. Sharma's words about maintaining healthy boundaries echoed in my mind. I was present, supportive, but firmly within my own space. "I'm here to listen, Sophia," I told her, "but you have to do the work to figure out what you want." Over the next few months, Sophia began therapy, influenced by my quiet recommendation. She started to see Eleanor's manipulations and the toxic patterns she had been trapped in her entire life. Our conversations shifted, deepening from complaints about Daniel to tentative explorations of her own identity, her own desires, independent of Eleanor's expectations. She even apologized, truly apologized, for her behavior at the wedding, for the years of dismissiveness. I was so wrapped up in Mom's approval, in being the perfect one, that I never stopped to think about how it impacted you. "I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I really am." The apology felt like a soft rain after a long drought. It didn't erase the past, but it watered the parched earth of a relationship I had long thought dead. "I appreciate that, Sophia," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "It means a lot." Our mother, Eleanor, meanwhile, was in a full-blown crisis. Sophia's impending divorce was, in her eyes, a catastrophic failure, a public stain on the family name she had so meticulously polished. She tried every tactic to pull me back into her orbit, to enlist me in her efforts to fix Sophia and mend the broken image. Texts and emails flowed, more frequent and more frantic than ever before. "Your sister is falling apart. You need to talk some sense into her. After all I've done for you both, this is how you repay me?" She even tried calling Leo, a move that only solidified his understanding of the dynamic. He handled it with his characteristic calm, simply stating that my decisions were my own, and he respected them. I drafted a new email to Eleanor, a concise, firm reiteration of my boundaries. Dr. Sharma had helped me craft it, focusing on clarity and emotional detachment. "Eleanor, I understand this is a difficult time for you. However, my relationship with Sophia is between us. I am not responsible for her choices, nor am I available to mediate your relationship with her. As I stated previously, I require space and will not engage in communication that disregards my boundaries. I wish you peace during this time." I sent it, then archived her contact, not blocking, but setting a firm internal boundary. The familiar pang of guilt was there, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by a sense of calm resolve. My chosen family continued to flourish. Gabriella, who had recently started her own successful marketing firm, and I collaborated on a few projects, intertwining our professional and personal lives in a way that felt incredibly supportive. My art collective was thriving, leading to a small gallery show where I exhibited some deeply personal pieces, including a portrait I called The Stranger, a representation of my journey to self-acceptance. Leo was there, beaming, and my friends filled the room, their genuine pride a palpable warmth around me. That spring, Leo and I found a beautiful loft apartment overlooking the Boston Harbor. It was larger than my Jamaica Plain place, with enough space for a shared studio, a home filled with light and potential. Moving in together felt less like a leap and more like a natural, joyful progression. We spent weekends exploring new neighborhoods, hiking in the Blue Hills, and planning our future with an easy synchronicity that made my heart ache with gratitude. He was everything I had never known I needed, a partner who amplified my strengths and accepted my vulnerabilities without question. One evening, as we stood on our new balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues, Leo turned to me. "Charlotte," he began, his voice soft, "I love you. I want to build a life with you. A real life, full of everything you deserve." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, velvet box. My breath caught in my throat. Inside, a simple, elegant sapphire ring, echoing the depths of the ocean and the expanse of the sky. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes full of earnest hope. Tears welled in my eyes, but these were tears of profound joy, of acceptance, of a dream I hadn't dared to articulate finally coming true. "Yes," I whispered, 1,000 times yes. The engagement was a stark contrast to Sophia's elaborate, status-driven affair. We chose an intimate ceremony at a small, beautiful botanical garden, with only our closest friends and a handful of relatives who genuinely wished us well. Dr. Sharma, whom I still saw monthly, helped me navigate the decision of who to invite and, more importantly, who not to invite. Eleanor was not on the list. It was a painful but necessary choice, one that ensured my special day would be free of the tension and manipulation that had shadowed Sophia's. I sent her a brief, polite email informing her of my engagement, but made it clear that it would be a small, private affair. Her predictable response of disappointment and subtle guilt-tripping rolled off me like water off a duck's back. Sophia, however, was invited. And to my genuine surprise, she came, not as a demanding sister, but as a humbled friend. She brought a heartfelt gift, a handmade ceramic vase, simple and beautiful, a reflection of her own burgeoning journey of self-discovery through art therapy. She even pulled me aside, a few minutes before the ceremony, her eyes shimmering. "Charlotte," she said, her voice quiet, "I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I'm so sorry I couldn't be this person for you when you needed it." I hugged her, a genuine, warm embrace. "You're becoming that person now, Sophia," I whispered. "And that's what matters." Our wedding day was pure magic. Surrounded by love that was freely given, freely received. No performance, no hidden agendas. Just warmth, laughter, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. Leo's family, kind and welcoming, embraced me wholeheartedly. Gabriella was my maid of honor, her fierce loyalty a constant comfort. As I looked at Leo, pledging my life to him, I felt a deep, resonant peace. This was my chosen family, the one I had built, brick by brick, with courage, boundaries, and unwavering self-respect. The years that followed solidified this foundation. My studio flourished, taking on larger projects, even winning a regional design award. Leo's photography career soared, and we often collaborated, our creative energies perfectly aligned. We bought a small, historic home in a diverse, artistic neighborhood, filling it with art, books, and the joyful chaos of our lives. Sophia continued her journey of healing. Her divorce was finalized, and she started a new career, one that genuinely excited her, free from Eleanor's expectations. Our relationship became a quiet, steady friendship, built on shared understanding and mutual respect. We weren't inseparable, but we were there for each other in ways that mattered, in ways we never had been as children. We even established a new, carefully boundaried relationship with Eleanor, limited interactions, always in public or on neutral ground, with clear exit strategies if her manipulative patterns emerged. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable, and it didn't disrupt the hard-won piece of my life. I continued to see Dr. Sharma, now just a few times a year for check-ins, for reflections on growth, for navigating the subtle shifts in family dynamics. She often reminded me that healing isn't a destination, but a continuous journey. My internal validation system, as she called it, had grown robust. I no longer needed external approval to know my worth. Eleanor's disapproval no longer determined my value. I understood her limitations, and while I felt a quiet sadness for the mother she couldn't be, I also felt an immense gratitude for the strength she had inadvertently forced me to cultivate. One crisp autumn morning, a decade after Sophia's wedding, I sat in my sun-drenched studio, sketching designs for a new client. Leo was in his darkroom, the scent of chemicals faintly drifting. The front door opened and in walked Sophia, holding the hand of a small girl with bright, curious eyes and a smudge of paint on her cheek. "Aunt Charlotte," the little girl, Maya, Sophia's daughter, exclaimed, running towards me. Sophia, who had chosen to be a single mother through adoption, was a fierce, loving parent, determined to break the cycles of conditional love she had endured. I scooped Maya into a hug, feeling the warm, uncomplicated affection of her small arms around my neck. Sophia smiled, a genuine, soft smile that had replaced the strained tightness of her earlier years. She insisted on coming to visit her favorite aunt, Sophia teased, and I needed to drop off some samples for your next project. As Maya busied herself drawing at a small table I kept for her, Sophia and I sipped coffee, discussing our work, our lives, the gentle currents of our evolving sisterhood. My life was full, rich, and authentic. I was a beloved wife, a thriving artist, a cherished friend, and now a doting aunt. The stranger I had declared myself to be that devastating day at the country club was no longer a stranger to myself. She was me, the authentic, whole, resilient woman I had always been meant to be. I had found my way home, not to a house defined by genetics or obligation, but to a life built on self-respect, chosen connections, and unconditional love. It was a home I had meticulously crafted, piece by painful piece, until it finally held all of me. My story is a testament to the power of walking away, of choosing yourself. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to break free from a relationship, even a family one, that was diminishing you? What did that journey look like for you, and how did you find your way back to yourself? I'd love to hear your experiences, your triumphs, and your ongoing paths in the comments below. Your stories are a powerful reminder that we are not alone.